Good evening and welcome to our debate tonight on the increasing importance and relevance of the knowledge economy in post-COVID-19 era. I'm very pleased to have three distinguished experts on the area of knowledge economy, technology, computer science, and data science with me from St. Lucia, from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and from London. And this is a continuation of the various Global Mind debates we started like 2 months ago during this COVID-19 lockdown. We have discussed several topics during these last 2 months, all of them leading to our 18th international conference, which will be taking place on the period between the 14th to 16th of July. It's going to be virtual because of the lockdown, but we were hoping this year we would have been hosting it physically and face-to-face, but because of this lockdown, we had to make it all virtual, and the deadline for accepting paper is still open, so please try to look at our website, and if you are interested to join the conference, please submit your abstract and paper as soon as possible. I think the deadline 15th of June, I'm not sure, you can check on our website. But to give you a quick background about these roundtable debates, we have been doing this debate for the last 3 or 4 years to give people an opportunity to discuss the topic which we will discuss in the conference with a wider participant from industry, from academic, from civil societies, from NGOs. And in the past, we have been able to travel and actually conduct this roundtable discussion physically, like in Sudan, in Morocco. We have been to Bahrain, different places. But this year, we have been conducting all these roundtable discussions online. Now, what we're going to talk about today is a knowledge economy and the importance and relevance. What exactly the core focus of today's debate is, we all have been discussing the issue of knowledge economy for the last 20 or 25 years. Every country is fully aware of the importance of knowledge as an enabler for sustainable development. The World Bank from 1992, 2000, they have declared this, and we even have a global knowledge economy index where countries start to prove or to demonstrate how much of their GDP is becoming not depending on natural or normal goods and services, but rather than on knowledge, products, and services. And Scandinavian countries tends to be high on this ranking, like Sweden, Norway, and these countries, normally they score quite high. But we also have countries who are, their GDP is not that as big as on the leading OECD's countries, like St. Lucia, for example, but they are demonstrating a good progress towards a knowledge-based economy. The knowledge-based economy has 4 pillars: education, innovation, ICT, information and communication technologies, and competitiveness. We are not going to discuss these 4 different pillars in this session as standalone, but we're going to discuss the 4 of them relating to technology, innovation, and digital transformation worldwide. And I'm very pleased to have experts. The 4 or the 3 colleagues who are going to join me shortly, they all have good experience academically and professionally and practice in the field about how technology innovation can help to really accelerate the progress of countries and companies and organizations towards increasing their dependency and share of the knowledge-based products and services in their economy. And I would like to start today by an example from St. Lucia. St. Lucia is an island in the Caribbean. It's a small island. And I remember we visited St. Lucia in 2010. St. Lucia hosted one of our international conferences under the leadership of Dr. Gail Rigobert, the Minister of Education and Sustainable Development. And at that time, when we went to St. Lucia, I met the Prime Minister at that time, His Excellency Stephenson King. And I remember at that time, St. Lucia has just had one of its hurricanes. That area or that part of the world in the Caribbean is quite vulnerable to hurricanes every year, natural disasters, as we call them. And I remember he said, as a proof of the role of ICT in saving people's life, he said when this hurricane struck San Lucia, people were making phone calls to help each other about finding a safe place to escape or to protect themselves. So just by making a phone call in that island, you will be able to help other families or other citizens or to direct them to a safe place or where to go and where to stay and so on. So that was a very simple proof of the role of ICT in saving life. But the role of ICT and technology in general, or ICT in general, or how countries are deploying and using knowledge and ICT innovation and others is increasingly becoming important. And what we're going to explore today with these three distinguished experts is that they will help us to try to relate this to, particularly from their experience. For example, Walid from Dubai, he has a good experience in the Middle East, in Belarus, in Estonia, in East Europe. We have Rawad in London. He also has very good experience in the Middle East, in the UK, in Europe, and so on. But I want to start first with Dr. Lindell from San Lucia. And if I will introduce you in a way, Lindell, that you are a highly qualified academics and professional, if I can say that. Lindell he obtained his master and PhD from University of Glasgow in the UK, in Scotland. He has a wealth of experience in ICT technology, and I think what I'm really interested, and we will talk about this later, his experience in terms of helping countries or in helping big organizations with their ICT policy and strategy, or generally technology policy and strategy. He's leading, or he founded and leading a CEO of his company, which is DataSure. He will talk to us about it. But Lindell, I would like to give you the opportunity. First of all, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. And I'm not sure what is time there, but I would assume it is not definitely as comfortable time like we have it here. But thank you very much. And also, thank you very much for contributing to the offline discussion, because we have been discussing this and I have listened to quite an interesting stuff from you. So not just take us through the Caribbean or the islands experience, but your global experience about this concept, and give us your perspective on this topic of the increasing relevance and importance of knowledge economy in post-COVID-19, which we hope this post-COVID-19 will come as soon as possible. So the floor is yours, Lindsay.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you for this invitation to be here with you and the rest of the distinguished panel. I appreciate the timing of this. I think it's very relevant given where we are and where we need to be. The experience so far coping with COVID-19 has meant that there's physical distancing that we've had to maintain. Certain of us have been fearful to a certain extent of the future. There's the economic impact, a social impact as well. We've had to basically force ourselves to adapt and to innovate, to encourage ourselves and to cope with certain strategies for improving what we do. So the journey from where we are now to beyond COVID-19, to address our topic more centrally, there'll have to be a newfound appreciation of our skills, of what we can bring to bear. Building on successes, perhaps being cautious, because the entire process, this journey will not happen overnight. It's probably going to take a matter of years, unfortunately. So to get from where we are now to post-COVID, we are looking at the whole range of the vaccine development, the scaling up of production, the delivery of those vaccines to achieve herd immunity. For a country like India, let's say, thinking globally, with 1.3 billion population, that may take close to a decade, if not more. The role of knowledge management in how we handle our current situation, we will be sure to realize the links between our different sectors, especially with greater integration with our health information, especially as we look forward to the next outbreak to stay ahead of it. What we are now doing is tracking people, tracking our movements, the logistics in making that happen, and the better understanding of the linkages that are needed to do so. It's quite significant. So what I can see from the perspective of being in a small island developing state like St. Lucia, which is a very small economy, there's a very significant stress on the economy. We are already a resource-constrained environment. When a hurricane hits us, we see physical damage. We see damaged bridges, roads, trees, landslides. With a virus that's invisible, causing economic damage, it's hard to see. And unfortunately, those who are not able to appreciate from the information management and knowledge management perspective how you ought to adapt and to cope might not be as au fait as the rest of us in terms of what we ought to do, how we should be progressing with battling this contagion. It will require a proper grounding in science and technology, in information management. We are sharing data about who's traveled, where they've been, who they've been in contact with. Building on that data sharing and having better information management skills, scoping and processing the sheer volume of data we've been gathering to get some meaningful insights. That's going to be critical. Taking those insights and developing better judgments, the knowledge management skills we need to take those insights and make some skillful and cohesive judgments for what we ought to do next. That's going to be a key factor in how we get out of this. So I can see that our progress will very much depend on how we embrace the impact of what's taking place. And we have to very carefully distinguish our scientific approach, our fact-based approach on personal beliefs. The prevailing, for the past few years anyway, beliefs encroaching into science for the case of example here, anthropogenic climate change. If you have doubts about something like that, how else might you frame your reaction to something you cannot see, like an invisible virus? So just to summarize very quickly, I believe we are undergoing forced innovation, especially with the severe resource constraints I've already mentioned. Boundaries of our imagination in terms of how we cope, those are being pushed aside. We really have to adopt new ways of working and develop new skills, establishing linkages, fostering innovation, and that's bound to lead to an acceptance, however grudging, of the change processes that are required and the new ways of working. But the good thing is that journey is a one-way journey. Once we start innovating, once we start embracing that change that we need, we will be forced to keep going. We will be building momentum. And I believe that's a good thing. The science and collaboration that's needed, the innovation, the technology adoption, the renaissance that's required, that I believe will benefit us significantly. And if we, for a moment, ignore the views of those who might be cornucopians, who might believe there's a way out of it no matter what, I still believe that our consistent approach to solving our problems, given our constraints, that's going to stand us in good stead. Our prolonged fight against COVID-19 will focus us on SDG number 3, which is good health and well-being. Our eventual response will promote SDG number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. That's what we will require to get out of it. But I believe most profoundly, if we look at SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, that may present an acute challenge because we will be having to grapple with the imbalances and the scale of the challenge. Poor, resource-constrained countries and small island developing states that can expect to be at the bottom of the totem pole as we come out of it, we'll have a significant challenge ahead of us. And I believe it's quite timely that we're having this discussion now to help provide us with some of the thinking, some of the preparation that's needed to take us out and through into a post-COVID-19 era.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Leonid. I really appreciate this, quite a very good introduction. I will come back to you to talk to us about maybe strategy, technology, policy, and strategy, as I mentioned earlier. But let me ask you this question just quickly before I go to the next speaker. Now, what is the situation with COVID-19 generally now in St. Lucia?
We are very fortunate right now that we've been able to stay on top of our infections. We have no deaths, thank goodness, and the country is starting to be reopened. We had a state of lockdown for a while. We had a curfew. It's been slowly shortened so that we can now more progressively go out and mingle, I suppose. We do have to wear masks for protection. Our chief medical officer has been quite clear on the steps we need to take. So expect in the next month, so in the next week or so, for the international travel to be, will be open for international travel.
To be eased, okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Lyndall. I will come back to you. Let me continue the good discussion you started by bringing in Engineer Walid from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Walid, thank you very much for your time. And I appreciate very much giving us the opportunity to listen to your, if you like, views and experience. Walid, you have a tremendous, very impressive CV. I mean, the more I read your CV, the more I say he's a very important person to bring on board. And what I like, you know, because we are promoters, and if you like, all the work we do is really about sustainable development and education. And thus, I can see that you have been in top 100 CEOs who cares, or at least with the sustainability agenda on board. You are an innovator, you are an entrepreneur, you are some of the youngest in all of this top list, which is good, and I congratulate you on this. Now, but in addition to your expertise, which I would like you to share with us, if you can also talk to us about your specific expertise as well in Estonia or Belarus. You have quite a lot of work there. So I will give you the floor to show us your perspective. And again, thank you very much for your time. So the floor is yours, Walid.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alam, and greeting to your to the other guests. Yeah, I'll just briefly introduce some of the milestones, the main milestones in my life, which have really made a significant changes towards the way I see the future and the way I see where I'm going and where the world is going. You know, in 1995, I was a GIS student in last year, and I sat with a friend of mine after I came from summer vacation. And that time, you know, as students, we used to struggle with copying notebooks, you know, finding resources and running behind libraries and all. And then he asked me to check something called the internet. So he literally told me that there's something called the internet. You need to check it. And then I was like, what is this? What is this new thing? You know, he explained it simply as a group of computers that sharing information. And then if you ask any sort of information, it will give you an answer. So I went next day to the research institute. I had a 15 minutes browsing. That time it was Alta Vista and Ask Chiefs. And I find, yeah, this is like true, you know, it's like been asking about some stuff, and then I got the answer right away. So from that time, I figured out this is going to have a major impact on my life, on the life of billion of peoples all over the world, and that's truly happened. So, so when we look at knowledge management as a concept, so as you have mentioned earlier, it's education, it's technology and ICT, it's innovation and competitiveness. Okay, when we look at education and giving my examples along the way to my kids today, post COVID-19, we can see a very, very significant change in the way that education is being conducted, in the way that young people are learning, and in the tools itself. You know, there were so many red tapes before into getting, you know, a proper online education. Earlier, like about 8 or 10 years ago, online degrees were not accredited. You know, more and more universities got into online programs, basically in management, entrepreneurship, and other programs which do not require physical attendance. And then we see when the COVID pandemic happened, it had to shut down everything, and then all the red tapes has to be eliminated, and they got even schools on board for online learning. Now, what is the take? Me being a father of 3 girls, you know, like they are in 8th standard and 6th standard and 5th standard. They have been adapting, you know, they have been using it, they have been learning about it, they have been learning about the constraints around it. So I think looking at this sector particularly, things are not going to go back like before, you know. They will never go back like before, because when we used to mentor innovations, when we used to mentor entrepreneurs, we asked them to consider the top 3 things that they cannot let go. And then we asked them, if you wake up tomorrow and you find, for example, money, I cannot live without money, you know, cash, you know, banknote. So if tomorrow you wake up and you find there's no money, so what would be the problems? The problems will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you manage to deal and solve those problems, the position of money in your life is no longer like before the incident has happened. So when we look at education, we anticipate that post-COVID, when people are coming back, things are going to be drastically different. Commuting to schools, you know, especially here in some of the crowded cities, it takes a lot of time. So you get stuck in traffic jams and stuff like that. And then also communicating, learning about technology, getting back to the classes which you have missed, like collaborating, you know, with other students, with teachers, and all. It's a complete new experience. But again, I think it will impact the way education is happening all over the world. The second pillar is technology. So when we look at technology from the mainframe time, you know, where mainframes are available in universities and research institutes for a specific, you know, high-end task, you know, that's need to be done for research or stuff like that. Going through the 90s and 20s, where there used to be big server room in every institution, and then once you get out of the office, you cannot use emails, you cannot collaborate probably. Then after that, we move into the 20s, where the SaaS model started, where mobiles are available, where even reply to emails, share information, and collaborate, work and call, and then technology enable work structure and the process to be changed. So if you are a salesperson, that's had to spend a lot of time out of the office. So you do not need to go back to the office to do things. So the engagement with being in the office or work premises has started to loosen up. I quote Sir Richard Branson a couple of years back say, 10 years ahead from now, we will look back and we say, why did we used to go to offices? Because basically you go to office normally either to get access to information, or to have a meeting with a colleague, or to share some files, or like to have some resources. Now we see most of those processes, they could be done remotely. And there are many technology companies that have been adapting remote support, remote work, and stuff like that. But again, when we have the pandemic, everything has to be accelerated. A lot of red tapes. You know, innovation was like it was like a nice to have thing, you know, to make things better and all this stuff. But again, it tends to be that innovation and risk management is a real. It's a real important factor. It's a real important factor, because nobody thought that everything is going to be shut down and about 4 billion people are going to stay home for a month or not even for a day, you know. So here, all the programs, if any establishment has a program for innovation, has been accelerating technology, supporting, and then based on that, we also develop artificial intelligence great deal. So whatever could be automated need to be automated immediately, because you need to take the human factor out of the game because of such pandemic or other stuff. So coming back to the third pillar, which is the innovation, as I said, basically innovation is often viewed as an application of a better solution to meet new requirement. So based on that, we see now the new situation that's came because of COVID-19 has accelerated a lot of innovation. A lot of innovation, even in the medical field, a lot of innovation, like ventilators, open source support, logistic networks are working in a complete different ways. People are even doing many things in a very innovative way. So that's all to deal with the crisis, and this will come back to the fourth element, which is the competitiveness. And the competitiveness, whether it's in economy, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in sustainable development, it's a very important factor. And right now, when we look at John Hopkins dashboard for like the pandemic spread, we can see how the competitiveness has been reflecting based on so many factors that has been accumulating over the last 10, 15, or even 50 years. So it's an index for competitiveness, for healthcare, for collaboration, for logistic network, for basic needs, everything. So right now, I think a lot of innovative programs has been dragging feet, a lot of strategies towards knowledge economy, digital economy, towards, eliminating brick and mortar stuff. But again, this pandemic has kept us in reality check on whether it's going to happen or no. And it's a life or death situation. I mean, like there's no option of not making it happening. It needs to happen. So this is a bit of outlines of what I think and what I've been doing, and how is it. Maybe we can get into details about each element later as the conversation goes.
Walid, thank you very much. This is very enlightening transition and continuation of what Dr. Lindsay said earlier. Let me just ask you a couple of questions before I move to Dr. Wad. How is the situation in UAE in terms of COVID-19 generally?
UAE, see, next week, Dubai is going back with like 50% of the local department and 30% with the federal department. The recovery cases has been going in a very good manner, and things are under control. It is one of the least places I would worry about, and I think it has a lot of programs that has been working, which has brought up these good outputs right now.
Okay, Walid, thank you very much, and stay with us, and I will come back to you. Let me introduce now Dr. Rawat from the University of East London in London. Rawat, I hope you can see me and hear me okay.
Yeah, now, I can see and hear you now. Good.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time, and it is great to have you here. Rawat, you are one of few people. I mean, as I said earlier, all these people, CVs and bio are available, but Rawat his master and his PhD are all about e-learning and artificial intelligence, data science. So I think, Rawat, you are one of the young experts in this area, which is a growing area. And many people have talked, even the UN is now talking about e-learning, and he has contributed in this area to a large extent in different conferences, articles. So with your experience, Rawad, and I will give you the chance to also show or give us your perspective on the knowledge economy, but I would be very keen if you can also, this terminology or this term artificial intelligence is being used widely now. Everyone talking about artificial intelligence and leadership and so on. And many people claim, some scholars claim that the 21st century or this next era of globalization will be led by artificial intelligence and data science. And you know both of them and you're an expert on both of them. But in addition, to give us an idea of what these tools, or at least artificial intelligence, or what is it all about, to what extent you see we have been derailed from the roadmap we have been, the whole world, it has been going down this direction. University are start teaching artificial intelligence, data science courses, everyone is talking about it, policy making, everything. And now suddenly we have this COVID-19. So I'll give you the floor, and thank you again. Thank you very much for your time, Rawad. It's your, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alam, and glad to join you here. I would like to continue with the same setting where my previous colleague talked about a little bit about the knowledge economy, and then we started to move toward the how technology can help in solving these problems. Now, technology definitely can help in solving the problem that we face in knowledge economy, especially with this time of COVID-19. Basically, the simple answer, we could say technology can help us making sense of the knowledge economy. Now, mainly we are talking about AI technology in addition to other technologies, but artificial intelligence specifically can help in that because it allows us to capitalize on the knowledge that we have as a human, and then also adding a bit of advancement in terms of technology that will allow us to get some kind of internal insights into the data that we have at the moment. One of the main issues here, we don't have a very common language, I would say, when we talk about AI. This is something I would say a problematic issue there, or one of my concerns, because we, as let's say expert in the UK, let's say, we talked about AI or artificial intelligence in different way that other people in, let's say, Africa or Europe or the United States is talking about. Everyone also from, let's say, their career point of view, they are talking about artificial intelligence. Let's say policymakers are talking about something different from technology expert and from end user point of view. And these are one of the concerns that we are dealing with here, especially when we are in this kind of pandemic time. We want, in general, AI to help us in solving our life problems. Usually, artificial intelligence can help us in many ways, specifically because it can be defined as a machine that can work in the same way that a human works right now. Of course, in the way that human are better than machine. Now, this has changed over the last 20 years, let's say, or the last 3 decades. And we are still seeing many changes while we are going toward data-driven AI techniques. One of the things that we are considering at the moment is how AI or artificial intelligence can help us specifically in knowledge economy. And if we go back to the definition or the 4 pillars you mentioned, Dr. Alam, where education is one of the key pillars here, we can see how artificial intelligence and technology can help in improving the sustainability of our education and improving the way that we deal with education in the proper way, the way we share information, and the way we learn together. And these are all new things that are continuously evolving day after day. And we can see in UK, if I would like to say about this, just only some of the UK figure, why this is different from other countries, because again, knowledge economy, if you would like to consider it in the UK, is different from, and of course in any other country, is different from the whole world point of view. So you need to build on whatever you have in terms of information and data, and then based on these figures, based on these facts, you figure out what kind of investment you would like to do and how AI can help you in doing that. So if I'm talking about, for example, some numbers, some figure from the UK economy, maybe we can talk about that this is a report published by Telegraph, sometimes this year, talking about £134 billion investment in intangible assets like data, like systems, and so on. And this is just published by the Office of the National Statistics. And if you go down further the line and just see all these kind of statistics, you can see how much we already invested in knowledge and how much of this investment is coming from young businesses. And this is, when we talk about young businesses, this is a very, very good point that we would like to reflect on, because usually the new companies, the new organization, usually they invest in technology more than the previous or more than the old one, with the hope that this technology will help them to reduce the expenditure, to reduce the amount of employees we need, to restrict the resources and optimize the use of resources. And this is one of the very good points that we can start with. Again, another issue here is just we need to invest in our educational system and technology infrastructure. AI cannot specifically help in investing in infrastructure. It needs extra cost at the same point, but on the long run, it will save a lot of resources and a lot of use from the technology. Again, if we can improve our educational system, this will improve a lot of our interaction with this pandemic. I can refer to one of the examples from this pandemic, and this is unfortunately it's a bad story. At the time of COVID, if you go back to the previous time of similar situation, you would see much more mature, I would call, behavior in dealing with this pandemic. At this time, maybe because every country is hit by this pandemic, we can't see a global research effort to solve this problem. There are some initiatives, and there are definitely some collaboration, but there are no, let's say, there is no clear direction where WHO and other organization can lead us to one certain solution. Maybe because this COVID is hitting us very quickly and very strongly, but the way we behave in the UK is different from Germany, is different from France, different from the state, and different from other countries. And there is no central point where we can share these kind of figures, knowledge. I'm talking about now going a step beyond the statistics, and we see exactly what's happening, what's kind of conclusion we come up with based on data, not just only based on investigation coming from doctors and from hospitals. Because doctors and hospitals now, they can do their job. They are overstretched and they are doing really good job, but again, they also require help from technology. And if you just measure it as one of the very advanced MRI devices in any hospital, you can see how much data you can get from that MRI device, and you compare it with whatever we get from a human expert. The human expert can play a very important role, yes, but once we match both, let's say, human expert with the AI or with the technology, we can, if we manage to find the good match between both of them, we can definitely get a very good number. I pretty much give this or justify this because we don't have a long-term AI strategy dealing with this kind of pandemic. It will be good if we can learn from this COVID-19, and unfortunately, it's not as we expected before. It's not going very quickly. It will last with us for a while, hopefully not too much, but it will continue for a while with us, despite the situation that we are trying now to go for gradual opening. There is no guarantee this will be over very soon. So I'm hopefully relying on the technology and the advancement of the technology to learn from this experience and try to put too much data in the place in order to learn from that. And yeah, we can respond. We can talk more about this, but I think we just need to leave the floor now for more question, I guess, if there is for that.
Yes, thank you, Rawad. Probably I will get you to deal with this question before I go for it. But thank you very much. Very good introduction. This is a question just came. How the artificial intelligence could help with COVID-19? I know you start to highlight that, but is there any clear answer to that one? Or because people, they can hear about this thing and they say to us, many times we've been accused of being too much academic, but let's not to be academic now. How can AI help in this COVID-19 era? What can it do?
Yeah, I think it can help in many ways. One of the ways is just when we get these numbers and try to go one step beyond the numbers and try to predict the behavior of such a virus, this is one of the very good way that we can do. Now, at the moment, we are looking at very descriptive let's say very descriptive dashboards in many of the cases that we have, simply because of many reasons. One of the reasons that we don't have a clarity about the behavior of such viruses, and again, we don't have enough data to gain some result from them. And in my view, in few weeks' time, maybe less than that, we will get more mature data now, because we have data in different places. We have data over time, over summertime, or before summertime, let's say from December time. And now also we are learning. And if we manage to capitalize on our learning and put it in one central point where we can customize this and see the behavior of the virus in different countries, then I think AI can predict some of the behavior for this virus and what we can do. Again, AI, for example, can help us in predicting how to recover our economy based on certain factors. And if economy is growing, then this is also solving one part of the problem. AI can help us building more advanced educational system. Now we are all learning from home. We are all working from home. So if there is enough technology to support us, then this is also solving or covering part of the story, which is the education. Now, if we manage to connect the dot later on, we'll come up with a better story. At least building up step by step using AI and advanced technology, I guess this would be better. And now in total, if you look at education in 2 years' time, you will find all educational institutes are dealing with AI and technology in a better way before the pandemic. Why? Because they realize that this is a plan B that should be ready all the time if we have any cases like COVID-19. And I guess one of the universities, the Open University in the UK, because they have delivered their own program using online and just virtually. Now they are in advance in most, if you compare them to many of our universities here in the UK. Why? Because they have been dealing with these issues for a while and they've learned a lot from them. So they are probably more capable of going a good progress rather than others.
Okay, Rawad, thank you very, very much. And sorry to start hitting you with a question before. Now, let me, you stay with us, Rawad. Let me ask Lindil, because Lindil, you have advised governments in the Caribbean and in St. Lucia in particular. It's a country, I keep saying it's a small island. It's not a huge country like Nigeria or like Brazil or like, but at the same time, in all World Bank reports, they are doing quite well in terms of, comparatively, in terms of knowledge economy, for example, index. They are much better than a bigger GDP or a bigger population countries. So perhaps you can, is giving us some ideas about a roadmap for policy formulation. I know you cannot answer a policy formulation question in such a short time, but can you give just a very brief roadmap for countries or policymakers who are listening to you now, not necessarily in the Caribbean or in the Latin Americans or in poor developing countries, no, across the world, they're listening, they want to hear from you. What is the roadmap? Give us some tips, some headlines, heads up. What do they have to consider when they're thinking of policy formulation and strategy towards technology? And perhaps examples of maybe from St. Lucia and other Caribbean countries, why do you think they are doing well in terms of knowledge economy?
Thank you for that question. I believe that if you look at the case of St. Lucia, our leaders progressively have perhaps been aiming in the right direction, generally speaking. If you look at some of our statistics, for example, our mobile internet penetration rate, on the books, we have more mobile phone connections than people. So we are very well connected. We have lots of young people who are connected.
So you have more mobile connection number than the number of people.
That's correct.
Okay.
So one person may have more than one mobile phone. But even then, there's been a noticeable impact with what Rawad mentioned earlier about e-learning, with the forced adoption of that new method of delivering learning online. We've noticed the need for the good connectivity consistent connectivity and access to not just the device, but the connectivity as well. I believe one of the things we have to look at is any disparities that might cause someone to be disadvantaged because they live in a community, in a household where they may not be enjoying the quality of broadband internet that may exist somewhere else. If you look globally, I was very pleased to note that with more and more people working from home, as Rod mentioned earlier, we had the likes of the BBC, we had the likes of Zoom, we had the content providers reducing the level of the quality of the video that they were processing through the networks, just so the availability of that bandwidth to be shared for those who will be working from home, for e-learning, etc. I think the collaborative approach that's needed for us globally, even without having access to the AI tools, that sort of global thinking is necessary. Within the Caribbean experience, there is a group called the Caribbean Data Family. We've been looking at and pulling together to review how our statistics compare within our region. The Johns Hopkins figures which are provided provide a decent set of statistics, but they're quite high level. And when you look at the Caribbean, we are multiple countries sharing that one space. And we want that granularity to allow us internally to make sense of the data and of our figures.
Okay, thank you very much, Lindell. We have a question here, but I will ask Walid, because I know you have global experience, but given that you are in Dubai now, you are in the Middle East, Rawad, you can comment to this question if you like after Walid. Read this question, Walid. It says, do you think the artificial intelligence could play a role to reduce the negative impact of disability on the Arab world? And by the way, tomorrow we have a roundtable like this on disability in the Middle East. So Walid, what can you say about this? Rawad, I will give you a chance to also comment on this. But Walid, given with you are in the region, you are in the Middle East or in the Arab countries, plus your experience, perhaps you can talk us also, maybe you can shed light about mobility and other stuff you've shown or you have demonstrated quite good knowledge and experience with your companies there.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alam. Yeah, I think artificial intelligence is bringing a lot of value towards automating, towards doing things in a better or different ways, as well as enabling, like for example, in case of the mobility and self-driving cars, or perhaps fighting accidents. So disability also, accidents contribute to 1.3 billion of fatalities between 5 and 25 years old. So it is the largest killing factor for youngers. And disability also comes out of accidents. There is a huge range, a huge percentage of disability coming out of accidents, especially in the Arab world. So I think utilizing artificial intelligence to fighting traffic accidents and mobility could be a very important role into fighting the cause of disability itself. Again, in Arab countries, and especially in UAE, there are specific programs for special needs. Programs to accommodate them within the workforce, program to enhance them and train them, and as well as programs to enable them to do things that perhaps better than other mobile people. So here we see the artificial intelligence in terms of automation, in terms of changing the way we work, in terms of gathering this large amount of unstructured data, and then allowing it to fight disabilities. It's very important. I remember a colleague of mine who 5 years it started a company called Kintrans. So the objective of Kintrans was converting sign languages to audible format. You know, so like for example, if you have got a hearing impaired person that's coming to an airport or to a government service center, and this person, it's either you bring for him a sign language translator who would understand what this person wants to say, or deploy this camera which uses computer vision into identifying the sign languages that the sign that's presented by this person, and then getting an audible format, and vice versa. Even the other guy could type the answer, and then based on that answer, another avatar with the sign language will present the feedback. So this is a very practical example of using of artificial intelligence to enhance or to eliminate the negative impact of disability.
Walid, if I don't interrupt you, but just a quick question. I remember years ago, we have watched here in the UK on TV in one of the UAE channels, this taxi, which is got no driver, which takes you to your address and so on. Is this on the ground working? Walid, is still there?
Yeah, the R&D in the ground, and actually we participated last year. We participated in Dubai World Conference for Smart Driving. It was a conference that was in October last year. So we participated in this conference, and then they demonstrated a lot of self-driving cars on real. You know,
and do you see a potential for these self-driving cars in the future?
Of course, I mean, like Dubai has a strategy for the government by 2030 that 25% of the rides should be done autonomous. So based on that, the Road and Transport Authority had last year had a challenge for self-driving mobility, and this challenge was participated by big players, right, from the biggest players globally up to education institution as well as the startup. And the output of this challenge, it was in the conference which I mentioned earlier back in October.
Okay, also, that's fine. Thank you very much, Walid. Let me just ask Rawad. Rawad, if you want to add more, you can add. But my question to you, Rawad, is really, you are an experienced person with e-learning. This is the core of your research, your PhD, and you are leading this in different, at King's College, now in UAL, University of East London. And the UN is very interested, and I remember you joined this. Now, to what extent do you see e-learning is the way forward, which we all agree, but again, the poor and rich conflict is again prevailing again, where those who are rich countries, OECD's countries, those who they have good infrastructure, are benefiting and enjoying the massive, if you like, breakthrough advantage, keeping their life going during the lockdown in the UK, Spain, Europe, whatever it is. But those in the developing countries, the poor countries with poor ICT infrastructure, because e-learning, you need an internet, basically, for example. The starting point is internet. To what extent you think the poor are still to suffer? Because this COVID-19 had showed us in the US, those who are poor likely to be hit harder, because if they are poor, they are likely to have obesity problem, they are likely to eat junk food, they are likely to have diabetics, heart problems, and so on. The way their flats, congested housing. So poverty is still, that conundrum between poverty and rich is there. To what extent do you see this advancement, like the one Walid was just talking about? We are so advanced, like in Dubai and others. We in the developing countries, the poor countries, are really the losers here, or do you see them not losers, but actually benefiting from the advancement of what people have done? So where do you stand on this? And do you see what the opportunities do you think e-learning will bring to developing poor countries?
Yeah, I think we have to agree in the beginning, there is no 100% fair technology that will solve the problem for everyone. But I think technology with AI advancement especially will help to reduce that gap between rich and poor for many reasons. One of these reasons is these technology can be invented by, let's say, any companies or inventors anywhere in the world, and they can be used, let's say, with limited capabilities. So if you don't have the full capabilities to, let's say, buy a very strong software, at least you can benefit from its basic functionalities. And that could be with free cost or with limited cost. Again, the innovation of the open source software systems, this is also another good improvement that we can, in the poor countries, say, yeah, we can use these kind of technologies because of the free, or let's say no cost associated with running these software systems. Now, again, advancement will continue, and then if we are talking about poor country will not be able to move, for example, toward driverless cars, okay, for many reasons. But they can at least do some kind of move toward, let's say, e-learning environment. And just to respond, to come back to the question that have been asked before, how AI can help, I would say, especially in disability, we all know that disabled people are having less chances than other people, normal people, to learn and to participate in public life. So now when you try to invent a technology to do some kind of captioning for YouTube videos and other video environment, then this is a good technology to allow people who can't hear, for example, have some kind of hearing disability, to watch and get the benefit of learning something. And what we call now in university, we started to develop, well, not started, but for a long time now, not so long, we are starting to talk about inclusive strategies for learning and teaching. So inclusive, I mean, we offer learning for many people, regardless if they are disabled or not. In this way, if I have 20 or let's say 10% of the community have some kind of disability, I don't want to lose their contribution to the community, because their contribution to the community will enlarge our opportunities to learn more, will also increase our economy, will develop our economy and our knowledge. So this is the way that we see AI. And if you look at the famous physicist Stephen Hawking, and you see this is, imagine if we don't have that technology that will enable some persons like him to be active scientists, imagine how much knowledge we will lose. Now, not every person like him, definitely, but there are other people who are not enabled because of their physical or mental disabilities to do or to contribute to the society. So I think coming back to your question, is the gap will probably stay, but will not be as large as it should be right now. I think the more we move toward our new normal, if I would say, after COVID-19, where we would like to coexist with such pandemic, we will see some initiatives like open source software system. We'll see some initiatives like supporting educational, like other big companies, and Microsoft and other, they are trying to make this software free for a while. So we'll see some initiative here and there. Poor countries will still to suffer to some extent to adjust from one model to another. But again, this might also come to different kind of benefit. So London air now is equality is much cleaner before the pandemic. Why? Because people stopped traveling. Now this is not a solution, but Facebook, for example, I remember they said 50% of our employees will continue working from home if they want after the end of this pandemic. So this means that we reduce the use of private transport, we reduce the use of public facilities, and so on. So these changes will come up later on all the time. So we will have to consider all of these factors and look at this from a comprehensive point of view in order to see what kind of innovation we can do in order to solve these problems together.
Okay, Rawad, thank you very much. I am also wide of the time, and please accept my apology for taking more than I promised to take from your time, but thank you. Now, Linda, there is a big argument worldwide. I have seen this even within the UN debates. When we go even to the UN, they talk about this one. There's one argument, and this is going on for 10 years now. Right. The UN, one of the UN report back in 2008 or 9, I can't remember, about ICT for development. It argues that most technology produced in developed countries, in the US, Silicon Valley, OECD's countries, is most of the time is being produced with ignorance, even though the United Nations report itself used that word, with ignorance or of developing countries' needs. So in the simplest way, to put it simply to our audience, in the Silicon Valley, they develop a new technology or a new way of doing things, whatever it is. They don't really have the developing countries in mind, but they do have the developed countries in mind. And that's when it comes to business, when we teach students, is true, and it does match with the global world trade. So in the past, still I think 50% of the whole world trade, 50% of the whole world trade is actually happening within just 10 or 12 countries within OECD. Japan, UK, Germany, US, believe it or not. So if you take Africa, Asia, in terms of global trade, it's really happening 50% in big companies, like countries. So to what extent you leading a company yourself, to what extent you agree or disagree, or have that view change now? Now we are in 2020. I'm giving you 7, 8, 10 years reports from the UN arguing companies, or I'm not saying companies like yours, but technology providers and ICT companies to really seriously consider developing countries' capabilities and needs, rather than just thinking of those of us in UK and so on. That's number one. Number two, sorry to give you a big question, but that because I want Walid to come in after you on this. For both of you and Walid, both of you are in the industry or leading in companies. To what extent, Lyndall, you see, or your evaluation as someone with this experience, do you see globally? I know this is, again, you cannot answer it now immediately without looking at the data. To what extent you can say we have been worldwide technologically reasonably prepared to use either existing technology like Zoom, like this system. We have never used this Be Live before. Now we are using it every day. It's perfect. You can see we are not talking to you. We are people in South Africa that are watching you, in Sudan, in everywhere now. So these technologies, they were there before, Zoom and all this stuff, but now we have been using it. We could have used them before the crisis. We had used them, but not like now. So to what extent you think countries have already been well prepared or reasonably prepared to really adopt and use technology to run their life, not necessarily during the lockdown, but we could have been using this long time ago to get great minds like you from all over the world and let them talk. So it's 2 bars, but apology about the long question, but because I wanted to spill over to Walid so he can take over from you.
Okay, the first point you made, the first part of your question about the development of technologies which are based on some sort of a dependency which would exist in a developed environment, in a developed nation. I think that is true. And it just reflects where the innovation takes place. And I think that's why in our particular circumstances where we have resource constraints, we cannot afford to spend the money that we would need to get the most up-to-date software, the most up-to-date licenses, the cutting-edge technology. We have to make do with what we have. And that includes cutting our budgets accordingly. So using open source software, like Rawat mentioned, I think is a natural way to look at how do we work within the constraints that we have. And I think it's a sensible place to begin. If you look at the development of mobile money in Africa, M-Pesa, that was where it started because they did not have the landline support that existed, say, in the likes of the UK. They had to use their mobile technology. So the thousands of miles of copper that would have been there to connect the vast distances was not there. They had to use mobile technology. So I think even if we look at what we have and our own constraints, and our small size may be one of those constraints, if we start looking at what do we need for our context, that will drive a certain level of creativity and innovation. And ultimately, I think intellectual property, which would then start to ease that balance somewhat. If we forever import a solution that was developed for another place with maybe a higher standard of living, with maybe more money to spend, with better quality internet, etc., we would always be playing catch up. So I think that's one way we could, although it requires some pain to have to go into that space, to have to innovate your way out. It's something I believe COVID-19 is forcing upon all of us everywhere at the same time. Because no matter what your size is, there's a constraint. We saw that with the hospitals. If you're a large country, you'll have a large population, there'll be a large number of people arriving in the hospital. In a smaller country, relatively fewer people. But again, you run into that constraint. Regarding your next point, Alam, about why we didn't adopt some of those technologies and ways of working before now, I think there's an urgency of now. Maybe there was also a crisis of imagination. Maybe we were just comfortable doing what we were accustomed to doing, which is the very antithesis of innovation. But now, when you're forced to continue to work and you have to work from home because the office is not large enough for the physical distancing required, you have to be creative. So what I like about what you said, Rawat, about people working from home and the workplace no longer being in the center of the city. Where you work just happens to be where you have your laptop, your computer, your mobile device, and your connectivity. I think that has a role to play in diffusing the adoption of technology throughout the country, not just concentrating it in cities. I believe that's a good thing. But going back to the urgency of now, if you cannot bring all your employees into your workspace, you have to find a way for them to deliver work from wherever they are. So I believe that was part of what kept us back, generally speaking, that things were working well enough. There may have been less pressure to leapfrog the problem that we are faced with now.
Okay, that's a very good answer, Dr. Lindell. And I think I would like Engineer Walid, to continue, particularly from UAE perspective. And I think UAE also is one of the countries been highlighted by the World Bank report a couple of times, 1998 and in 2010. And I think in 2010, the United Nations aspirations that 50% that countries across the whole world should achieve something, they call it, I can't remember the exact naming, but they wanted the whole world countries. You know, the UN, they will just recommend, they can't enforce countries to do things. But the United Nations wanted by 2010, which is 10 years old now, all countries across the world to have a minimum of 50% household connectivity with broadband. So if you have 10 million households, they want you to have 5 million, they have broadband. And interestingly, only 5 countries in the world achieved that. Only 5 countries in the whole world. One of them was UAE. So UAE has been reported many times in World Bank report with the knowledge economy in terms of doing very well. One of the top 5 countries which achieved that. And secondly, Walid, if you can comment on that. I have been in conversation with someone running a major project for the government in UAE. And he told me, you can really, Alam, see what you have been talking about the resilience of the system, deploying knowledge to make organizations very strong, to make it efficient. He said to me, you can really, I wish you were here, you could have seen the resilience of the systems in governments. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said to me, governments in UAE, he was talking about the government system, is working as efficient as before the lockdown. So during the lockdown, the government system was working very efficient. So to what extent, Walid, I know there's many reasons behind the country investment. Is it to do with investment? Or is it to do with leadership, like Lendi said? Because he said in St. Lucia, he said from the prime minister or the government, they were very keen to lead that way. And take example, like in Sudan, there is no even government information officers. We have been discussing this a few days ago. So while in St. Lucia, you have the prime minister or the president, whatever, is leading the way in driving the movement towards information and communication and knowledge in countries you don't even have that person. So what is happening and what lessons can be learned from UAE, taking into account also the neighboring Bahrain, is being cited by the United Nations World Bank report as number 1 in ICT. I can't remember 2015 or 18, number 1 in terms of ICT, and that's why you can see it in Bahrain very well. So what is your comment on this? And what are the lessons learned?
I think Dr. Alam, leadership play a very, very important role because it cultivates and put the strategies forward. I caught Sheikh Mohammed about 20 years ago when the inauguration of Dubai Internet City, which was one of the main technical hub in the region here, which is hosting now most of the multinational technology companies from all over the world. He said, if it's good for business, it's good for Dubai. So the whole direction is to get into the latest technology, to get into the latest stuff. This year was called the year to prepare for the 50 years ahead. Yani before even getting the pandemic really spread out and everything, this year was planned to prepare for 2070, which is the next vision. The space program is launching a vehicle to Mars. So they've already taken the whole setup, and it's going to be launched, or it's been launched already. So we believe that based on what the leadership is trying to convey to the citizen, is that nothing is impossible. You know, the second part is the investment in human capital. I was in the e-government early in the 20s, and we used to have like waves of students that we do the project with them, you know, like internship, like the final year project, like 4 months and stuff like that. And I'm very glad to see some of those students are right now leading big organizations. They're leading government departments. They have been very well taken care of, and they also have the enthusiasm and the resilience in order to make it ahead. So basically, what we see is like nothing is impossible. The second thing is like the innovation. Right after the economic crisis in 2008, you know, there was a huge move towards innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems. There are a lot of big projects that came out during this time. For example, Souk.com, which was acquired by Amazon. It was one of the main innovative companies that came up after the economic crisis, and Souk is employing about I think thousands of people that have been employed by Souk, and now it's being sold to Amazon. Another startup that came out of this ecosystem is Kareem, which was sold to Uber for $3.1 billion. So these success stories, they have been a product of a continuous successful strategy, a cultivation of entrepreneurship ecosystem, as well as a lot of support to the whole you know, business community. So I come also to your question about why technology companies do not care about other locations, maybe less fortunate locations. You know, when you look at establishing, especially a technology business, you look at something called business model canvas. You do not have the capacity and the resources to put a complete business plan. So if we look at the school of Steve Planks, he's an entrepreneurship a professor in Stanford University. He identified the startup as an entity that is looking for a repeatable and sustainable business model. So when you are looking for a repeatable business, a scalable business, a sustainable business, the conversation is two-way conversation. Mean that the whole technology startup is about hypothesis. So I assume if I do like 1, 2, 3, 4, then this will sort out the problem for persona A, persona B, and persona C. So what's happened now, whenever any startup, especially in technology product, they come up with the first set of hypotheses, and then they go back, they go to their customers, and then they get the feedback. And then based on this progress back and forth, then the product is being developed based on the client need, based on the customer need. Because end of the day, if I'm selling product online, I'm selling a technology product, then it's completely based on the customer satisfaction and the value that you are transferring. So when we look at this, when we look at startup at Silicon Valley, they wouldn't have access to, for example, to clients or customers in Africa or in Asia and all this. Nevertheless, there are some countries like Kenya particularly, and I've been involved in Young African Leadership Initiative, which was established by President Obama about 10 or 12 years back. And then the objective of the program was to develop the and to develop the public sector and the governance, public sector, education, and entrepreneurship. So in that program, as mentors, we used to mentor small groups of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs that can bring up some of this new stuff. As Lenin said, M-BISA is a very successful model that's been presented to the world. And another very successful product is Ushahidi. You know, Ushahidi, it's a first response system that has emerged during the riots in Kenya, the election riots. So through Ushahidi, it's an open source platform, and then it has been used in the hurricane in Haiti. It has been used in the pandemic right now in Italy, Spain, and different places as one of the most trusted first response system, which identified the demand and supply in crisis situation. So I believe that it's a responsibility of the leadership in every country to establish that innovation platform and ecosystem in order to allow this innovation to come from within the people of the country. And I will quote here an experience that we had with Belarus, for example. I have been using back office development from Belarus for the last 10 years. I think last October, we were in Belarus, and the government took us for like a tour to the tech hub. And they have a very inspiring story, you know. Belarus was a hub of technology development during during the Soviet Union. And then it has the educational capability to bring engineers who have participated in spaceship programs, nuclear program, chip development, and all this stuff. When the situation in the Soviet Union, they found out there is a lot of human capital that's coming out from Belarus that's going to Europe, they're going to Japan, they're going to US, and based on that, they figured out they have about 50,000 tech experts that are being graduated every year, and they established the tech hub. They did a lot of government subsidization, and they created the ecosystem. Today, Belarus has R&D hubs for a lot of big companies. You know, you see these companies where you come in at one premises and you see 1,000 people. They're all paid in foreign currency. They are all living in their country, and it has contributed, I think, closer to 50% of the GDP of the country. So this is one of the establishment. When you look at Estonia, for example, they've created the e-residency program. Their model is to bring the technical entrepreneurs from outside the country and then give them the platform. Right now, the e-residency program, Estonia has one of the most mature e-government program. Like literally, you could do everything without visiting anywhere. You do have a card with the PKIs, and then you can do everything there. So they have focused into getting more companies established in Estonia, facilitate the whole requirement in the ecosystem, and then capitalizing on Estonia being the birthplace of Skype. It's been the birthplace of transferware. It's been the birthplace of many other innovative companies. Bolt is established in Estonia. Taxify right now established in Estonia. So these companies are a product of that particular enhancement, the ecosystem, which has been really open with very, very minimum red tapes. I mean, I could see absolutely no red tapes. And this is the responsibility.
No, sorry to interrupt you, Walid. Well, I thank you very, very much. I know we exceeded all our time. And just to bring, I wish just to maybe to mention one, because we have a large network across the whole world. Dream, she's a consultant for the World Bank, many organizations for the Gulf, or she's a well-known person in knowledge economy. I tried to invite her to intervene, but I think we will definitely get her on board one time. But what I wanted to say, using this Reem as an example, she's in Jordan, not necessarily the people are in our network. If you would like to propose anyone, we have always committed to bring the best experts we can bring. We're always keen on to bring people from all across the world. Yes, we are a UK founded and based organizations, also American. I mean, the founding organizations are UK here in the United Kingdom and also in the US, but we're really trying to reach everywhere. We have people from South Africa, Latin America, and Brazil, in all of African countries, Middle East, almost every place. So please, if you want to, particularly, we are very keen to discuss the topic, which people they want to listen about it. So that's number two. Number three, all these topics, they will be go and in our, we have a big library, and I know universities are using it. We have one article published by a Nigerian professor. I have seen it a long time ago when people showed me the records. It's been downloaded 48,000. So for people like us, Rawat can agree with me, academic in the UK, if you have one of your articles being downloaded 48,000, that's a big impact. Because we're not just here talking about, I'm sure all of you, it's not about having a master or a PhD, it's really about having impact. So I would like to, so please go to our website, was.org.uk. Now, I would like to finish, and I will give you this, Rawat, so you have the pleasure of finishing this talk on my behalf, on these other two guests' behalf. Now, Rawat, I'm just going to give you that opportunity because you are an educator, you are a lecturer at the university, and your core of your research, your PhD is about e-learning. Now, during this lockdown, we're going to continue to be locked. Yes, there is some ease and not ease, but we are going, life is not normal, and we will continue to be locked down. Even after this easing of locking down, we're still going to be minimizing our time out of the house. We are staying in houses. Can you please give a practical advice as an educator, as an e-learning expert? Kids, women, young generation in particular, because we are very keen on young generations. Give them advice. I remember we had on this program, Dr. What's his name? From Saudi Arabia, who was in Brighton, Dr. Mu'taz. He gave in his talk like 20 websites where people can actually go and study for free. Big organization. What is your recommendation to people to do at home? Watch videos of learning, how to entertain themselves. You know, the mental well-being of people is becoming very seriously now being evaluated. Governments want to get us out of the house because they said mentally we're going to be very stressed. So kids, young women in particular as well, young generations, give them some tips. How can they benefit from whatever the level of broadband they have, whatever the level of ICT, if they are in Africa, in America, give them whatever experience. You yourself have a global experience. So I will let you finish with advice for people staying at home. I want your advice to encourage more people to stay at home, but to entertain them at home.
Okay, thank you so much. A very difficult question. Tend to be like a government response to these issues. But anyway, I mean, there is a plenty of things that we can do at home, actually. And you are right when you said government would like us to go outside home because of these kind of mental issues. And again, this links us to our previous question: how AI can help in this pandemic. It can predict the mental issues that people will suffer from. This is one of the issues that some AI researchers are looking into now. Now, again, I guess internet becomes one of the very key aspects of our life from now on. Things will not go back to normal in the very, very close time. So we will have a new norm, I guess. Universities will not open their spaces, and if they open their spaces, that will be for a limited number of users. So we'll no longer see students, 400 students in one large theater, let's say. We will get used now to what we call dual delivery for all of our activities. So once we have this seminar, we will make it maybe physically available, maybe after a couple of years, but we'll continue delivering the same activity online for those who cannot join us, simply because there are vulnerable people who cannot be inside, these buildings, who cannot also commute and travel to these activities. So I would say we need to use the internet connections that we have, the broadband connections, very carefully. I think many of us as end user, we are not ready to fully work from home, to fully learn from home. We don't have the specific equipment that we need. And that's why we used to travel to the university to work from there. We used to travel to companies to work from there instead. Now, there are some companies now, they're changing their business. I think IKEA, they started to sell what we call work from home office. So this has been never there. Now, this is a new invention in their business model because they need to adapt and adjust to this new era. Now, I would say not all of us, we are lucky here in the UK, and particularly in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates, and some other countries as well, with this broadband connection resources. I think in other countries, we don't have that luxury of internet connections, but we can at least use some of the resources, less resources intensive lectures. We have a lot of Coursera and also these kind of massive open online courses that we can use. We can also connect with our peers, with our colleagues who work in different places, different companies, to share experiences with them. I mean, we could simply do simple thing, just reviewing a book, a session that we agree there is a book that we need to read in the next week or next couple of weeks, and we come up with a session online to do a review for that book, what we learned from that book, what we can learn if we continuously read in the same way. And this is something, it needs some connection, needs some connectivity, but again, it's one of the ways that we need to change our culture to deal with this pandemic. Kids need to be, educated how to learn, how to deal with the environment like this. We have been, giving them access to online now, internet resources, I would say not in a very good way, because if we leave them in front of these computers for a long time, their mental activity might be affected as well. And we cannot also, let's say, monitor them all the time. So this thing we need also to consider. So we need, again, to go back, analyze whatever resources we have, whatever problem we were trying to tackle, and look at this one by one. And it's different from one family to another, one country to another, one person to another. But there are also plenty of opportunity online. So we try to grab whatever we can for the sake of developing our knowledge, getting some changes, some innovative model for our business, some ways to interact with our families, and so on. So that's probably my quick response. Hopefully it's useful.
Thank you very much, Rawad. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. I think we almost spent 1.5 hours. That's the maximum, really. I am allowed to go so over it. But it has been great to have you all. They are really great speakers, and I really appreciate your sharpness in your answer. And we have learned a lot. Walid is, when you go to his LinkedIn profile, he's in the top 100, top 50, top 10. All I know about this top in the past when I was a student is the top 10 in the music, in the songs. But as this list is growing, top 10 or top 100, Walid, thank you very much. And I wish to see you in the number one, not only in the top 100 or not 50. Walid has shared with us very good experience. Lindy, really grateful for your wealth of experience, because not many people even have traveled to the Caribbean. They don't know even how to go there. So bringing that on board was very, very good, because I have seen the Caribbean. I know how great these nations, how resilient they are. And bringing that, showing us how they are using technology is very good. And also your global experience. You studied in one of the best universities in this country, in Glasgow. And Rawat, thank you very, very much. I think you are one of the luckiest to be having that forefront science, like data science and artificial intelligence. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. But just to clarify for people, many people, they send me, Alam, can you publish the timetable? Unfortunately, it's very difficult, because these people, Rawad is in London, Lindil in San Lucia, and Walid is in Dubai. All the people we bring, they are from different parts of the world. So we really have to manage the timing. And sometimes someone is like the other 2 days, we have one from New Zealand. She said tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is like early morning here. So it's not easy to get people because they are not in the same place, number one. Number two, they asked me about the language, and I did explain that. We will try our best. We will stick to the English, but sometimes we have the three speakers speaking Arabic, and I can speak Arabic. We speak in Arabic like tomorrow. I will tell you about this shortly. We are very keen to get the French, because we get within our network lots of people who speak French. So it's just depending on people availability. And I am hoping Professor Abdel Ghadir from Lille University will lead on that very soon, because he speaks French, English, and Arabic. And he can lead, because we got lots of expertise on French from North Africa, from France, and other parts. And we will keep, but you have to appreciate, we need to get the four people. Translation is very difficult on this one. We're doing our best to make it. Again, that can open up the gate for just asking people to help this initiative, because in order to get people to get translators to use more expensive systems, it really needs funding, and which we don't really have at the moment. But finally, to finish this conversation, I would like to say the following. For those who are joining us tomorrow, we have a very important roundtable about disability in the Arab countries. And we are very, very lucky to have four distinguished speakers. We got first, Dr. Haitham Al-Bashir. Haitham is an expert, he's a consultant in neuroscience. He's currently based in Dubai as well. He was a leading consultant here in the UK. He's an expert on child disability. So really, you will hear to top people really tomorrow as well. We have Fawaz Al-Dakhil, who is in Saudi Arabia. We wish him all the best. He's one of the leading campaigners for disability in the Arab world. Unfortunately, he's sick on hospital. He's still insisting to join tomorrow. And we have Dr. Muhammad Abdin. He will join us from Japan. And he's someone started, he's blind. He continued all the way until he became a distinguished professor in Japan. So you will see a first-hand experience. And the fourth and last or not least, we have Najwa Hussain from London. She's someone with tremendous experience in the media. She's a journalist. But in addition to that, she herself, I can't remember how many years, but like 10, 15, 20 years, I'm not sure. For a medical reason, she also became using now wheelchair. So she started her life, she was a normal person, but then she became also disabled. So we're going to learn a lot from her in both disability in women and as a journalist. Now, having said all that, tomorrow I have reminded people, and I know my colleagues have done the same, but tomorrow the session starts at 1 o'clock London time, 1 p.m. London time. And the reason for that, so it can allow time for Japan. The time difference in Japan is quite far away. So please remind all those who are watching us now and they would like to join us tomorrow. Tomorrow our debate will start at 1 p.m. London time, not 6:30. And with that, I would like to thank you all again. Thank you very, very much. And I hope to see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock, not 6:30. Thank you, Rawat. Thank you, Lindil. And thank you, Walid. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.